Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Hui Yuhao crossed his legs and sat down by the lakeside. He retrieved some food from his storage type soul tool and began to eat as images flashed by in his mind, one after another. His emotions wouldn't calm down for a very long time. He didn't know whether he could return after entering the Great Star Do Forest this time, but there were some things he couldn't leave behind. The thing he wanted to do most right now was visit the Clear Sky sect and see Donga. His eyes became gentle and tender when he thought about Donga, but the thoughts in his heart became increasingly determined and resolute. He couldn't stay here forever. Him being imprisoned here indefinitely was no different from death. But he couldn't leave now. He had to complete his experiments with spirits and resolve the conflict between Shrek City and the Great Star Do Forest before he could leave. After that happened, he could leave with no worries at all. He had thought about many things on the road back, and had made a plan for his future. Hui Yuhao was clear that some people from the academy had definitely seen his army of undead. That was an army of 100,000 undead. It was impossible that nobody saw it. Perhaps nobody was thinking about that for now, but what about when everyone calmed down? His buddies from the Tang sect would know what was going on, and the academy could guess as well. Summoning undead was an ability that belonged to evil soul masters. He had made that decision with no second thoughts, because he had thought it was the right thing to do, but he also understood that summoning an army of undead as large as that meant that he could no longer hide his secret of having a third martial soul, which held his necromancy. He wanted to leave some things behind for Shrek Academy and the Tang sect before he left. Afterwards, he had so many other things to do. He wanted to look for Donga, and there was something else he had always wanted to do. His emotions and his state of mind were unstable, but his formidable spiritual power allowed him to plan carefully and rationally. He had his own plans on how he would leave this place, and just like he had said to the 5 savage beasts, there were only eternal benefits in this world. Under the pretext of having sufficient benefits, leaving this place wasn't impossible. Hui Yuhao sat down with his legs crossed, and began channeling his soul power to aid his recovery. He had faced down 5 great savage beasts, and the pressure that he had to take from Di Qian above Shrek City before this had exhausted much of his energy. Even his body was a little hurt, but his formidable life energy meant these wounds didn't cause him any real damage. Soul power circulated in his body as a rose gold vertical eye gradually emerged behind his back. Light that resembled patterns of the sun shimmered around this vertical eye, and everything seemed very peculiar, as gentle spiritual undulations expanded outward from Hui Yuhao's body. The water of life not too far from him rippled faintly, because of the spiritual undulations coming from his body. Hui Yuhao could feel that the strength from his life gold was very greedy, and it wanted to absorb the water of life's life energy, but he forcibly suppressed it. Of course, he wanted to boost his own life energy, but this water of life was part of the Great Star Do Forest's core, and it contained immense life energy, far larger in volume than his life guardian blade and his life gold. If he dared to absorb the water of life's life energy at a time like this, he would be shaking the Great Star Do Forest at its very roots. Di Qian would never let him get away with that if he did so. After Hui Yuhao had left the evil demon forest, he had hurriedly absorbed his 7th soul ring and immediately traveled to the Heavenly Soul Empire. He was smart enough not to inform the body sect directly. Instead, he went to look for the Heavenly Soul Empire's royalty, Princess Wei Na, and returned to Shrek City as soon as possible after passing that information to her. He had used his full strength to unleash his necromantic spell, and summoned his army of undead afterwards. Only now did he take the time to finally stop and catch his breath. At the same time, he felt the changes in his body after he became a soul sage. Hui Yuhao felt as if he were weak, like a lamb to the slaughter, when he was up against someone like Di Qian, who was stronger than even ultimate Doluo. But he was calm now, and focused on sensing the transformations in his body. Only now could he see what had actually happened to him. The soul power flowing through his body had become a gentle purplish gold color. He understood that his soul power hadn't evolved by itself. Instead, his soul power had changed qualitatively after Chiyoa had offered herself to him. At the same time, Hui Yuhao could clearly feel that after he fused with Chiyoa's strength after her sacrifice, his physique had become many times stronger than before, especially in terms of strength. His strength had grown exponentially. Chiyoa was the 3-eyed golden lion, and she was thick with blood descended from the golden dragon. Otherwise, she couldn't have pretended that she possessed a golden dragon as her martial soul. Right now, her golden dragon's strength had merged completely with Hu Yuhao's soul power, and had become part of him. Compared to that, his soul power's evolution was secondary, and the changes to his body had undoubtedly built a stable foundation for Hu Yuhao's future progress. Soul power wasn't the only thing restraining soul masters after they became soul doluo, their bodies were limiting factors, as well. Overly immense soul power demanded more and more from a soul master's body. Therefore, many soul doluo repressed their soul power growth rate, while they used all sorts of methods to train their physiques, and only when their bodies attained higher levels of strength did they dare to try and raise their soul power to another level. Once soul masters became titled doluo, they would be faced with such a situation at almost every rank of soul power. This also meant that towards the final stages of a soul master's progress, a soul master's body became one of the most important factors that limited their development. Hu Yuhao possessed immense life energy bestowed upon him by his life gold. That, in addition to the strength of the golden dragon that Wang Qiu'er had offered him, meant he wouldn't have to be concerned about his body, at least before he became a transcendent doluo. There was no need to mention his spiritual power's qualitative changes. He had relied on his fusion with Wang Qiu'er and even killed a 100,000-year evil eye tyrant. Even though his element's crushing superiority had determined the outcome of battle, Hu Yuhao's spiritual power was so frighteningly strong that it was also a substantial reason for his victory. He had absorbed 2 soul rings within a short period of time, and his strength had grown to the point where he had become one of the stronger individuals on the continent. Furthermore, he could feel that as he became stronger, he had managed to consolidate and understand much more about his personal abilities during the 3 months he had spent in closed-door cultivation. Following the passage of time, these understandings would help him grow even faster. Dorma was in a deep slumber, and Qiu'er had offered herself to him, and both incidents broke his heart. But he was a lot stronger than others of his age, and after ultimate martial souls broke through 7 rings, their initial limitations would swiftly disappear. His talents and his potential would be gradually revealed in the future. Hu Yuhao briefly sensed the transformations in his body before he slowly entered meditation. He was swiftly recovering his physical and mental strength amid the dense life energy released by the water of life. One day passed before he woke up from his meditation. He opened his eyes and felt invigorated and fully energetic. He took a deep breath, and thick life energy flooded in through his nose. He felt so comfortable that he almost moaned. Hu Yuhao began to understand why Di Qian could metamorphose 8 times and become the king of the savage beasts, with more than 800,000 years of cultivation. Perhaps the Golden Eyes Black Dragon King hadn't been alive for 800,000 years, but he resided in a place where life energy was so dense, and he still had the auspicious Emperor Beast and the Sky Dream Iceworm, among other external forces, amplifying him. It would be strange if he didn't evolve. A faint fragrance wafted from in front of him. Hu Yuhao lowered his head subconsciously, and saw several green fruits stacked up in front of him. These green fruits were spherical, and there were fine and compact golden dots on their surface. Thick aromas lingered around them, and they were very alluring. Hu Yuhao came from Shrek Academy, and he was very knowledgeable. He was momentarily astonished before he immediately identified these fruits. These were golden jade fruits, considered very rare and exotic. Golden jade fruits were natural treasures that boosted a soul master's physique and soul power. They were indeed treasures, as they were very beneficial and nutritious for soul masters. There was no doubt that Di Qian had ordered some soul beast to send these fruits to him. Hu Yuhao wasn't courteous at all as he picked one up and gobbled it up in a few bites. The fruit wasn't very delectable, its flesh was chewy, it oozed with juice, and it wasn't sweet. Instead, it tasted bitter. But Hu Yuhao didn't dare to waste even one bit of something this good, and he even ate the fruit's outer skin. He wasn't greedy for more, and stopped after ingesting one. The effects of a golden jade fruit were very potent, and he wouldn't be able to absorb more even if he ate them. One was enough for now. After a few moments, gentle and warm currents began to spread from his gut to every corner of his body. The soul power inside his dantian became a lot more lively, and Hu Yuhao didn't have to activate it as they followed naturally and circulated along the path designated by his mysterious heaven technique. Hu Yuhao had 7 soul rings, and this golden jade fruit's boosting effects weren't that impressive. However, the fruit was very nutritious, and adding in his meditation during the past day, his mind and body were instantly raised to their peak condition. Hu Yuhao took a step out as a layer of faint golden light glowed on him. He slowly punched out with his fist, and his body instantly became brilliantly golden. Spiritual power and soul power immediately fused together, and that rose gold vertical eye naturally appeared behind him. He had simply concentrated for this punch, but Hu Yuhao discovered to his surprise that this fist's strength was comparable to the force of his fist of remembrance. Golden light radiated and didn't dissipate, as if a golden whirlpool was consuming everything within 10 meters of his fist. The seamless fusion between soul power and spiritual power produced an all-new ability. Hu Yuhao heaved a sigh of admiration inside. Just as teacher said back then, this is the feeling of a perfect sovereign's descent, where spiritual power and soul power are seamlessly integrated. He didn't stop as he continued to think. He used Ghost Shadow Perplexing Track and the Tang sect's most basic fist techniques at the same time. His movements were very slow. He paused almost after every punch, and he focused on understanding and sensing the changes in his soul power and spiritual power. Hu Yuhao obtained better understandings of his own abilities after every movement. But he was very careful throughout the entire process. He relied on his formidable spiritual power to skillfully control his attacking force, so that he didn't hurt the plants around him. His movements slowly began to speed up, but the golden colors released from each punch became smaller and smaller. Initially, the golden colors stretched to more than 10 meters, but they were gradually withdrawn to about 7 to 8 meters, and then to 5 to 6 meters. By the time his body became like an illusion moving at high speed, the radiance on his fists had vanished completely, and even the undulations from his soul power and spiritual power were gone. A shadow began to stretch out behind his back, but that shadow wasn't his afterimage. Instead, it was the goddess of light. The goddess of light moved in the same way that he did. However, she was reflected from his body, so the two of them seemed like they were moving together, as if they were dancing on the lakeside. Hu Yuhao practiced this set of fist techniques for 2 hours. When he withdrew his fists and stood up straight, the goddess of light appeared right in front of him and didn't dissipate, as she did the exact same thing. Dense golden light gradually rose around Hu Yuhao and transformed into spirals above his head as they expanded out from him, one after another. The past 2 hours had been very qualitatively transformative for Hu Yuhao. He had completely absorbed the golden jade fruit's effects, and he had used the past 2 hours to finally streamline and understand the changes to his body that his 2 new soul rings had brought about, truly grasping the strength of being a soul sage. Impressive fist techniques, a plain voice rang out, and Hu Yuhao snapped his head around and gazed into the distance. He was the only person by the lakeside before this, but there was someone else there at this moment. Wasn't that the beast god Di Qian, dressed in black? Di Qian was in his human form. He stared at Hu Yuhao, and his eyes flowed with faint approval. Hu Yuhao bowed subtly in his direction and said, "You flatter me. I'm like the light of a firefly in front of you, elder." Di Qian smiled plainly. He seemed just like a warm elderly man at this moment as he said, "No, you are outstanding enough. You're probably not even 20 years old, or a little older than 20 at most. It's no wonder the auspicious Emperor Beast gave you her approval. You possess many special qualities that other humans don't. You can still keep your composure in a dangerous place like this, and you can achieve 100% concentration. You can already be considered very outstanding because of this." Hu Yuhao said nothing. He didn't know how to continue the beast god's conversation, and the set of fist techniques that he had just displayed just happened because he felt like it. Training by yourself is so uninteresting. Why don't I accompany you? Di Qian's next sentence rendered Hu Yuhao speechless with slack eyes and widened jaws. The beast god had more than 800,000 years of cultivation. Did he really want to fight Hu Yuhao? "Elder, you." Hu Yuhao stared lifelessly at Di Qian. Di Qian smiled faintly and said, "We're just having a practice fight. Just try your best." Di Qian made his move before his words finished registering in Hu Yuhao's mind, and he didn't give Yuhao time to think about it at all. He took a step forward, his hands were still behind his back as he charged toward Hu Yuhao. Hu Yuhao immediately felt a frightening and stifling pressure slam him in the face from the moment Di Qian made his move. That feeling resembled the same feeling he had felt in the yin-yang love-querying valley, when he was completely crushed by that projection. When he was crushed back then, his body had crumbled into dust, and nothing was left. However, Hu Yuhao wasn't like he was back then. He didn't use a single soul skill against Di Qian's charge, because he didn't have the time to activate his soul skills. He stood in place as he circled his hands before him with his palms facing out, and slowly pushed out. Di Qian was as fast as lightning, while Hu Yuhao felt like a doddering old man. However, because his movement was so slow, his palms pushed out at the same moment Di Qian arrived in front of him. In that moment, Di Qian discovered to his surprise that Hu Yuhao had become illusory to his senses, as if he had integrated with nature around him. Hu Yuhao's life energy, and even his fortune, was one with nature. Hu Yuhao was sent hurtling backward, and landed on the floor after flying more than 10 meters out. He stumbled as he hit the ground, and seemed like he was in disarray, but he used Ghost Shadow perplexing track and dispelled the impact bit by bit. Di Qian stood where he was and didn't pursue Hu Yuhao. He tilted his head at Hu Yuhao and said, "Now I believe that the auspicious Emperor Beast has given all her destiny and fortune to you. It's a pity that you're not a soul beast, and you can't bless the great star Do Forest like she did." Hu Yuhao stopped moving as well. Di Qian clearly hadn't used his full strength, but even so, he had felt as if his spirit and his blood were about to be forced out of his body from the impact when Di Qian collided with him. It had felt like a mountain had crashed into him. "Thank you for showing mercy, Elder," Hu Yuhao said as he bowed towards Di Qian. Di Qian frowned and said, "You humans have so many formalities." Hu Yuhao's answer was neither haughty or humble. "This is human culture that we have inherited over the generations: filial piety, respect for one's seniors, loyalty, politeness, honor and shame. Those things form the foundations of human culture." Di Qian said plainly, "I don't know about all that. However, we're just starting. Try your best." His body quivered as he spoke, and he charged towards Hu Yuhao once more. He moved a little faster this time. Hu Yuhao didn't dare to be careless. He understood from his previous experience that the golden-eyed Black Dragon King wouldn't deal him a fatal blow, and his footwork changed subtly as he took 2 quick steps out and adjusted his position. His soul power circulated smoothly and at his whim within him, and a vertical eye flickered behind his back as he merged all the forces in his body once more. His eyes turned rose-golden color, and compared to the previous round, he managed to enter his peak condition within a much shorter period of time this time around. They clashed again, and Hu Yuhao stumbled backwards. He was pushed more than 10 steps backwards before he could regain his balance. However, his situation was a lot better compared to when he was sent hurtling backwards before. Di Qian's eyes flowed with surprise, but he said nothing as he charged at Hu Yuhao once more in a flash. Hu Yuhao naturally didn't dare to relax one bit. He was starting to readjust and harmonize himself when he was thrown backwards, and he made sure that his mind was calm so that everything in his body could come together as one. Hu Yuhao could feel that Di Qian's strength was stronger in their second clash, but his own force had become a lot stronger as well. Therefore, his defense was a lot better than during their first collision. More importantly, that feeling where his spirit was almost shaken out of his body was gone, and his spiritual sea was unnaturally stable. A rose-gold vertical eye hovered above his spiritual sea. The Sky Dream Iceworm's original body was hovering in his spiritual sea. His golden eyes were filled with anger, and dense spiritual power flooded out from him and integrated into Hu Yuhao's spiritual sea. However, a bluish-green figure appeared in front of him at the same time. This figure raised her hand and knocked him on the head as she shook her head at him. The Sky Dream Iceworm seemed a little depressed as he stared at the charming yet dissatisfied face in front of him. He reluctantly stopped his actions and withdrew his spiritual undulations. Hu Yuhao could feel everything that was going on clearly, but he couldn't be bothered with thinking about them. Something else happened when he clashed with Di Qian for the 3rd time. Right before his palms pressed against Di Qian's frame, his palms suddenly arched inwards as a gentle suction force appeared in his palms. Sucking Di Qian in with his current strength was probably futile, like an insect trying to move a tree, but Di Qian was momentarily startled when the gentle suction force appeared, because he didn't expect Hu Yuhao to do such a thing. Di Qian instinctively controlled his own power, and his forward impact naturally weakened a little. Hu Yuhao only took 5 steps back this time. Furthermore, his yielding hands suddenly pushed out as he stumbled backwards, and a sphere of light flew out and slammed into Di Qian, who was hot on his heels. Di Qian's movements didn't stop. However, this was the first time Hu Yuhao had retaliated. The golden light vanished into thin air in front of Di Qian. Hu Yuhao and Di Qian clashed once more, but Hu Yuhao was sent flying through the air because he was preoccupied with retaliation. Hu Yuhao felt his chest tighten, but he didn't feel discouraged at all. He was very determined, and he had already gone through so many of life's tribulations. Flying a distance through the air from the collision wasn't all that bad. At least, he was able to put some distance between Di Qian and himself. A longing look flowed from his eyes, and he seemed to turn transparent all over when he withdrew his right fist. Wang Dong's projection appeared quietly behind him. However, she seemed different from before this time. Wang Dong's projection was colorful, as if she had actually descended beside Hu Yuhao. She was smiling beautifully, and her charming eyes were tinged with bashfulness, as her long and pinkish blue hair draped over her shoulders. She twirled her hair with her fingers playfully, and there was even a subtle sassiness at the corner of her lips. Yes, this was the most beautiful Wang Dong in Hu Yuhao's heart. Dong was behind him, and she was also in his heart. The fist of remembrance. Di Qian could have slammed into Hu Yuhao one more time, before he could unleash his fist of remembrance, but Di Qian deliberately slowed down this time. He allowed Hu Yuhao to raise his fist's aura to its highest possible level. Di Qian watched that longing in Hu Yuhao's eyes, and that dash of anxiety at the corner of his mouth, and then studied the enchanting and elegant young girl behind his back. Even the golden-eyed Black Dragon King was full of admiration at the sight. Has this fellow raised human fighting techniques to such a high level? Not even many transcendent Doluo can reach a level of integration and fusion like this, can they? Di Qian no longer held his hands behind his back anymore. He reached out with his left hand and opened his palm to block Hu Yuhao's fist. He didn't do so because his body wasn't strong enough to take this punch. Rather, he did so out of respect. Not a single sound was produced in this clash. Di Qian's smooth white palm grabbed Hu Yuhao's fist, which was glistening golden. However, Di Qian's expression changed drastically in the next moment, and he swiftly released the young man's palm, as if he had grabbed hot charcoal. Hu Yuhao's fist of remembrance reached in deep, just like that, and slammed against Di Qian's chest. Golden light gathered, and there seemed to be a giant and formless hand with an iron grip on Di Qian's body, such that he had no choice but to take a hit from this fist. The beast god's body quivered as dark golden light flickered once on his body. The space around him that had collapsed was instantly shattered, and he transformed into a dark golden ray and withdrew far into the distance. Hu Yuhao's punch didn't hit anything in the end. If a human or a soul beast had been watching this fight, they would probably have been so astonished that their eyeballs would have popped out. Who was Di Qian? He was the strongest savage beast in the entire continent. He was the beast god of the great Star Do forest. Yet he was forced by a soul sage to the point where he had no choice but to evade his attack. If this was spread to the outside world, Hu Yuhao would become an instant celebrity. Di Qian waved his left hand and frightening soul power undulations appeared in midair. An enormous pitch-black dragon claw appeared out of nowhere and grasped Hu Yuhao, sealing all the soul power that he wanted to activate in the next moment. Di Qian forcibly pulled him out from his longing emotions. Hu Yuhao woke up completely, as he sensed all that tremendous squeezing pressure around him. He gazed at Di Qian, and couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Di Qian himself seemed a little dazed at this moment. His expression was a little pale, but his eyes flowed with a dash of tenderness. However, his expression swiftly returned to normal, and he didn't seem very friendly when he looked at Hu Yuhao once more. Your spiritual power is stronger than I had imagined. This strength isn't something the auspicious beast has bestowed upon you. Concrete material spiritual power. Hu Yuhao was also a little dazed. He didn't really understand why Di Qian was so afraid to interact with his fist of remembrance. With Di Qian's strength, not even the Haodong palm can hurt him even a little bit, let alone the fist of remembrance. But why is his expression so strange? Di Qian said plainly, you can train by yourself. However, you'll have to make the necessary preparations for what you have to do 2 days from now. With that, Di Qian vanished into thin air beside the lake, just like that. Hu Yuhao didn't move an inch as he watched Di Qian disappear, and he began to contemplate. What can it be that makes even the beast god afraid? It can't be the strength of my fist of remembrance. Even if my spiritual power were twice as strong, I couldn't possibly hurt him. Since he's not afraid of my attacking strength, then. Emotions. Yes, he's afraid of the longing feelings within my fist of remembrance. My soul power is like an ant compared to the beast god. However, the gap between our spiritual powers isn't that great. When I'm longing for Donga, my spiritual power is raised to its highest possible level, to the point where I am unable to control it properly. This longing feeling is completely presented in my fist of remembrance, and it must be that emotion that affected the beast god. It must be that emotion that triggered his memories, and everything that he misses so much, so that he evaded my fist in the end. Hu Yuhao was very intelligent. He understood the process after contemplating for just a short period of time. Who says soul beasts don't have feelings? Seems like the beast god has feelings and emotions deep in his heart. Hui Yuhao's thoughts stopped here, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. His thoughts were full of wonderful goodness, as he thought about the joy of being together with Donga. The greatest reason why his fist of remembrance was so powerful was because he would be immersed in his emotions. Back then, he had used this strength to defeat 2 evil soul Doluo, and this was the very reason why he could accomplish that feat. However, just as Shusansha had said to him, he couldn't rely on his 3 ultimate Haodong skills in the future. Otherwise, once Wang Donga woke up and returned to his embrace, his cultivation would be greatly weakened. At the very least, his fighting strength would be greatly reduced. Di Qian was gone, but Hui Yuhao didn't stop cultivating. He rarely had the opportunity to be in such a quiet place that was so rich with life energy at the same time, in addition to the golden jade fruit's nutrition. He seemed to have returned to the days when he had just entered Shrek Academy with Wang Donga, when he didn't sleep or rest so that he could meditate more. Hui Yuhao discovered as he meditated that no matter what he did, Donga's figure kept surfacing in his mind. He was in a bit of a daze. Yes. Ever since I left the Duke's mansion, I've been together with Donga, and even though we've been separated from time to time, we were still thinking about each other and longing for each other. Don't worry, Donga, I'll definitely look for you when I settle some things. He became more immersed in his meditation, as thoughts spun through his mind. He felt and sensed the fusion between his soul power and his spiritual power, and every soul skill that he had absorbed. Typical soul masters never had enough soul skills to use. They had to decide whether they needed control type or assault type soul skills when choosing soul rings, whether they needed soul skills for single targets or an area of effect. Questions like those always bugged them, but Hui Yuhao was in the opposite situation. He just had too many soul skills. He was born with twin martial souls, and this meant he innately had twice as many soul skills as normal soul masters did. Furthermore, he had 200,000-year soul rings among his many soul rings, and he had another rose gold soul ring that belonged to Chioa, which was equivalent to a 100,000-year soul ring. He had another 1,000,000-year soul ring that gave him 4 soul skills, and he had several soul bones, as well. Hui Yuhao wasn't afraid of not having enough soul skills. Instead, there were too many different kinds, and he always had certain problems choosing which soul skills to use. This was also what Hui Yuhao had to iron out at the moment. His 3 ultimate Haodong skills side effects were too great, so he had to use them as seldom as he could afford to in the future. Under such a situation, choosing soul skills and how he was going to fight became Hui Yuhao's most important matter at the moment. Hui Yuhao didn't want to add any soul rings to his second martial soul, the Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion, at least for the moment, because there was no need for him to increase his number of soul rings. Obtaining more soul rings would boost his physique, but he didn't have to worry about that after assimilating the Golden Dragon's strength. He would rather work hard to improve his spirit eyes, and only when he became a title Doluo would he try his best to add higher-level soul rings to his Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion. From his perspective, not even 10,000-year soul rings meant much to him, only 100,000-year soul rings could satisfy his needs. Hui Yuhao had no idea how many ranks above 70 his soul power was at the moment. After he absorbed his 7th soul ring, because that soul ring belonged to a 100,000-year evil eye tyrant, his soul power rose by quite a bit. He estimated his soul power to be at about rank 72, more or less. He wasn't even 20 years old, and yet his soul power was extraordinary. This also meant that if the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Dueling Tournament was happening right now, he would still be qualified to participate in the tournament. He was a soul sage with an ultimate martial soul. He also had twin martial souls. He could probably easily sweep most teams by himself, or perhaps every single team. 2 days passed as he meditated. Even though time was very fleeting for soul masters and their cultivation, these 2 days had been very beneficial for Hui Yuhao. He was starting to find the path that belonged to him. Di Qian didn't reappear over these past 2 days, but nobody knew if that was because his emotions had been stimulated by Hui Yuhao's fist of remembrance. Di Qian. A respectful call rang out, and Hui Yuhao was jolted awake from his meditation. He noticed the Emerald Swan wasn't far from where he was when he raised his head. He had no idea when she had arrived. She lives up to her name as one of the 10 great savage beasts. I didn't notice her even with the sensitivity of my spiritual power. Bai Ji was still relatively friendly towards Hui Yuhao, and she nodded subtly in his direction. Hui Yuhao hurriedly got to his feet, and returned her greeting. A black shadow drifted in from the center of the water of life. Di Qian's appearance hadn't changed since they'd last met, and he asked plainly, "Is everything prepared?" Bai Ji nodded and said, "The people from Shrek have arrived. However, we have to hurry. I'm afraid our kinsmen won't be able to control themselves." "All right, let's go." Di Qian waved his hand, and Hui Yuhao immediately felt the space around him go dark. He was already soaring through the sky when he regained his senses. Probably only these few savage beasts dared to fly across the great Star Doe forest, and only the beast god dared to fly so outrageously. There was a patch of dark clouds beneath Di Qian's feet. Bai Ji, Hui Yuhao, and he was standing on these dark clouds as they soared towards the edge of the forest. They seemed like they were moving very slowly, but they were actually flying at lightning speed. Hui Yuhao was a little worried when Bai Ji mentioned that she was afraid her kinsmen couldn't control themselves. Hui Yuhao understood what that meant. The great Star Doe Forest's soul beasts had just fought a violent battle against Shrek City, and both sides had suffered heavy losses. Under such circumstances, both parties definitely hated each other to the core. Shrek Academy's people were over at the great Star Doe Forest's edge, and it was possible that the soul beasts there would attack the humans, because they couldn't control their impulses. Di Qian was flying far too quickly. At least, he was faster than any soul tool that Hui Yuhao could think of. The dark clouds began to descend, while these random thoughts were still spinning his head as cursing sounds and the howls of soul beasts rang out one after another in his ear. A dull dragon roar echoed through the skies, and the sky darkened completely. The situation was a little messy a second ago, but it calmed down in the next moment. The dark clouds landed on the ground, and Di Qian appeared in front of the soul beasts, with an ice-cold expression on his face. He turned around and faced the masses of soul beasts being led by the Bear Lord, the Myriad Demon King, and the Scarlet King. They were inside the Great Star Doe Forest's peripheral region, and there were thousands of soul beasts in this place. Almost every soul beast that had at least 100,000 years of cultivation was concentrated here, and all of them were at least 10,000-year soul beasts. Most of these soul beasts had participated in the battle not long ago, and even those who hadn't heard about the damage that the bitter and cruel fight with those humans brought to them. Almost every soul beast's eyes were filled with hatred and violence. There were also many humans 1,000 meters from them on the other side. Every single elder from Shrek Academy's Sea Gods Pavilion was here. Other than them, the body sex leader, Dubuzi, led the soul masters who were here to reinforce Shrek Academy. In addition to the soul sages that the three empires had deployed to reinforce Shrek, there were at least several hundred other people here. Furthermore, their individual fighting strengths were superior to the soul beasts. If the beast god Di Qian was taken out of the picture, it would be hard to determine who would emerge victorious if both parties erupted into battle. Elder Xian heaved a faint sigh of relief when he saw Hui Yuhao, who naturally arrived at the same time as Di Qian. Quite a few people from the Tang sect were here, beside the elders from the Sea Gods Pavilion. Bei Bei, He Kai Tu, Shu Sansha, Jiang Nan Nan, and Xiao Xiao were all here. Besides them, the Earth Dragon sect leader, Nan Shui was also here. Nan Qiuqiu and Yi Gai were absent. Everybody became a little excited when they saw Hui Yuhao. Hui Yuhao signaled to his companions that everything was fine. Di Qian, is this how you host your guests? Elder Xian's voice traveled from far away, and every soul beast could hear him. Di Qian turned around and faced the humans. At least for now, you are not guests in the Great Star Doe Forest. You are still our enemy. Elder Xian's eyes grew focused. Does that mean that you're not sincere this time? Di Qian answered coldly, sincerity depends on whether your experiment is successful. What's the point of sincerity if your experiments are unsuccessful? Elder Xian said coldly, Di Qian, don't think we are afraid of you. There is an army of 100,000 soldiers gathered at Shrek City right now. We will follow you to the end if you wish to do battle. Dubuzi and Elder Xian combined could restrain Di Qian, even if they couldn't defeat him. The reinforcements, who had arrived in Shrek City over the past 3 days, were numerous enough to the point where they had the strength to meet the Great Star Doe Forest head-on. Elder Di Qian, Elder Xian, please calm down. The existence of spirits is beneficial for both parties. May I conduct the experiment before we begin negotiations? Hui Yuhao raised his voice and spoke as he walked over to Di Qian's side. Elder Xian's expression warmed a little when he saw Hui Yuhao. The soul beasts had suffered severe losses during the war, but did Shrek Academy not suffer in similar fashion? Even though Shrek Academy's losses were relatively smaller compared to their adversaries, Shrek Academy had lost the greatest number of people in this war across the last 10,000 years. There were already more than 1,000 dead from this battle alone. Di Qian turned around towards Hu Yuhao and nodded as he waved towards Bai Ji. Bai Ji unleashed a crisp call as various powerful soul beasts instantly stood to one side, and a group of soul beasts gradually walked out. These soul beasts could only be described as frail and infirm. Those who were severely wounded walked in front, and some of these soul beasts were carried by other soul beasts as the Emerald Swan and her kin treated them. The soul beasts who were positioned at the back seemed very lackadaisical, and their soul power undulations were extremely weak. Evidently, their lives were about to end. Elder Xian gestured to the humans, and the crowd separated as the volunteers stepped out. Hu Yuhao was surprised that not a single member from the Tang sect appeared amongst these volunteers. Jiang Nan Nan and Xiao Xiao had recently broken through to rank 60, but they had claimed their 6th soul rings before this. The Tang sect's other members hadn't reached a bottleneck. Nan Qiuqiu was close, but she was still one step away. However, Hu Yuhao wasn't entirely unfamiliar with these volunteers. He actually saw someone he was very familiar with amongst the volunteers, Dai Huabin. Dai Huabin's soul power is at rank 60 now. And he hasn't obtained a soul ring. Not just Dai Huabin stepped out, Ning Qian and Wu Feng were also there, and Ning Qian was dressed like a man as he walked out while holding hands with Wu Feng. Wu Feng was no different from how she used to be, but her expression had become a lot gentler than before. Several other students from Shrek Academy's inner courtyard had also volunteered. Hu Yuhao could name most of them, while the rest of the volunteers consisted of individuals from those who came to reinforce Shrek City. They greeted and gestured to Hu Yuhao in the distance in unison as they walked out. Hu Yuhao wasn't very familiar with them, but he could vaguely guess that he had probably rescued most of these people from Sunrise City, and that was the reason why they recognized him. The soul beasts and soul masters, who had volunteered, stepped out from their respective camps and stood at the front. Hu Yuhao turned around and looked at Di Qian as he said calmly, "Elder Di Qian, please attach restrictions to me, but don't hinder my circulation of soul power and spiritual power. You can give me poison if you like." Di Qian was momentarily stunned, but he immediately understood what Hu Yuhao was trying to say. He answered plainly, "No need. Go. He is worthy of being called the Beast God. Is he not afraid of me taking this opportunity to escape?" Hu Yuhao couldn't help but admire Di Qian as he stared at Di Qian's calm expression. This was how the strongest individual in the world carried himself. Hu Yuhao didn't say anything flattering, but bowed deeply in Di Qian's direction before he turned around and strode towards the center of both parties. The Bear Lord frowned and said, "Di Qian, this fellow is very slippery. What if—" "Shut up." Di Qian's calm voice was full of unquestionable majesty. The Bear Lord closed his mouth and said nothing more. His eyes were full of fury and resentment, but he didn't dare to talk back to Di Qian. Hu Yuhao walked to the center of both sides by himself and said, "Please send your respective representatives out." A soul beast was delivered in front of Hu Yuhao from the soul beast's camp. This soul beast was in a truly terrible situation. It was a tiger, and Hu Yuhao could judge from its shape and size that it had at least 10,000 years of cultivation. However, half its body was no longer there, and if the Emerald Swans hadn't been continually supporting his life with healing soul skills, this tiger would have died a long time ago. The 100 human volunteers glanced at one another. They were a lot more anxious compared to the soul beasts, and nobody wanted to be the first brave volunteer to take this risk. In the end, nobody knew whether creating spirits would be dangerous, and they would be a lot nearer to those soul beasts if they stepped forward. If the soul beasts attacked, they would take the brunt of their assault. At this moment, a cold voice declared, "Let me." Someone strode out from the group of humans, and he widened his strides, arriving in front of Hu Yuhao with a few leaps. A complicated look flashed across Hu Yuhao's eyes when he saw this person, because this person wasn't anyone else but his half-brother. At the same time, this person was the one who had caused his mother's death, and was also his enemy. Dai Huabin. Even though Dai Huabin's mother was the real culprit, Dai Huabin had directly caused his mother harm. Dai Huabin had kicked Hu Yuhao's mother when her body was already frail and weak. His mother's condition had deteriorated from there, and she couldn't be treated anymore afterwards. Hu Yuhao hated the duke's wife the most, but Dai Huabin was number 2 for sure. He had suppressed this hatred deep in his heart over the years. However, his hatred began to surface as he became stronger and stronger all the way until they were inside the Yin-Yang Love-Querying Valley. Hui Yuhao and Dai Huobin had attempted to rescue their father in the Yin-Yang Love-Querying Valley and had eventually saved the white tiger Doluo, Dai Hao. Afterwards, Dai Huobin didn't hesitate to ruin his own physical appearance for Zhu Lu, and Hui Yuhao had finally developed a thread of respect for Dai Huobin. However, respect was only respect in the end, and his hatred had never been dispelled. It wasn't hard to imagine how Hui Yuhao was feeling as he stared at Dai Huobin. From Hui Yuhao's perspective, this was a great opportunity to exact revenge. As long as he was willing, he could make an accident happen when Dai Huobin was assimilating with his spirit, and Hui Yuhao could end his life, just like that. However, this thought only flashed once in Hui Yuhao's head before he gave it up. He arrogantly told himself, "One day, I will use my own identity to stride back into the Duke's mansion, and I will exact my revenge uprightly and frankly. Murdering him in the dark is shameful, and I can't bring shame to my mother." With these thoughts in mind, Hui Yuhao swept away the dark shadow in his heart as he nodded in Dai Huobin's direction. Dai Huobin looked at him with an expression that was far better than before. "You saved my father back then, and I haven't been able to thank you. Perhaps, thanking you is a little late, but I will always remember this favor. You will not be my enemy in the future." He pointed at his heart as he spoke. Hui Yuhao felt his feelings ripple when he heard those words. He nodded and said, "Prepare yourself. After this, you have to be completely sincere and willing to fuse with the soul beast for it to become your spirit. You can't reject it in any form at all, because the process will fail otherwise. What I am about to use is an equality contract. If the fusion is successful, the soul beast will become your soul ring. I trust that you know how beneficial spirits are, so I won't explain any further. All right, come." Dai Huobin just stood there as he relaxed his body and unleashed his martial soul. Dense black and white fur began emerging from his body, and his frame became larger and burlier. Hui Yuhao turned towards the soul beast and said, "I know you can understand me. This process will be the same for you. If you want to live, and if you want to allow your life to continue, then you have to follow through with this experiment. Do you understand?" The tiger stared at Hui Yuhao with its remaining eye and slowly nodded its head. Hui Yuhao took a deep breath and said, "You two have to relax at the same time. Don't reject me in any way, and I will guide you both to complete this fusion ritual." Hui Yuhao released his spirit eyes as he spoke. More accurately put, his spirit eyes had transformed qualitatively into another existence after he fused with Wang Chua. They were now the eyes of the Azura. Part 1.